So, welcome back to our Endless Space 2 playthrough on Riftborn on Endless difficulty. So, we've just finished the game. As you can see, we've picked up our third obelisk of all space and time. Actually, not visible in the system view. We have one here, and then we have one here, and then we have one on Talitha. So, we've won the game with a 1 victory at this point. And I just wanted to make this video to quickly recap the general strategy. For those of you who maybe didn't watch the entire playthrough, couldn't watch all of the videos, or just want to refresh on how the strategy worked. And this episode we'll try and conceptualize the basic strategy in a game of Endless Space, and think about how the phases of the game flow together, and how in different phases our goals changed and how we pursued those goals to set ourselves into position and ultimately win the game. So, in the first phase of the game, it's really just about you and maybe your closest neighbor. In this phase of the game, the opening, you really want to strengthen your economy. Make sure you have a strong enough economic base that you can move into the middle game and affect galactic politics and put yourself in a good position to win at that point. So we opened in a relatively economic fashion, but then we noticed that the Sophons were encroaching on our space and decided to capture a couple of their systems through medium to early aggression. We didn't do the fastest aggression, but it was still relatively early in the game. So that strategy pursued A, getting a lot of good planets for us, and then B, picking up nearby planets that we could easily attack. And in that way, we built up a base of a number of systems, which we could then use as our economic base for more or less the rest of the game. So, when doing this with Riftborn, the key factors were picking the right law. As soon as we had outposts, we pick up beachhead bylaw to make those outposts grow way faster. Because we can't really spend titanium in the early game. We could spend Hyperium, but we didn't have that much of it. Because we wanted to use titanium for lots and lots of compression singularities. So beachhead bylaw really helped us to colonize new systems as outposts really quickly. The other thing, we looked for high industry systems like Ash, this special area planet, the unique planets, and also lava planets, and including in our main system actually. And prioritizing those planets increased our industry, allowed us to colonize new systems. So that was the economic expansion portion of our opening. We used that to quickly colonize a number of planets. Normally I would have colonized more planets and then worried about expansion disapproval later, but in this case we spawned really close to another empire, and there was another empire on the other border, so we didn't have that much room. So I made a somewhat unusual decision of trying to attack early with the Riftborn, and it was a reasonable success, though we came quite close to losing Musus. Though we picked up Vorta, which is a nice planet, and Deneb. The important thing to know, so there's some important things. The crucial technologies for this early aggression are always going to be focused plasma and autonomous construction. The extra coordinated command, extra command points are always important. The tanks are always important. They're going to be better than... If you have a pure tank army, it's going to be better than any tank-infantry combination, or equal to pure tank army in the early game. Until late in the game... Wait, let me find it. When aircrafts are unlocked. Never mind. I forgot where the aircrafts are. But once you unlock aircrafts, that composition changes, but for the early game, tanks are just the best for ground combat. I mean, we didn't get to really abuse it in this playthrough, but just for any other playthrough, always remember to get this upgrade because of these two important perks. The main issue we had with abusing these tanks was that our manpower is very aggressively capped in the early game as Riftborn, part of which makes it difficult to attack early, or at least slightly annoying, because you have to divert industry into manpower. Then the other thing is the A2s, the A2S slugs that you pick up through focused plasma, and the other upgrades, starting military upgrades we do in compare, and you also get the T upgrades for military. So those are the key upgrades for attacking, along with this agri drugs. along with efficient shielding, so you pick up better hulls. And then the real crucial, apart from these colonization upgrades, which are also important, the crucial upgrade for setting up an economy after that, or economic game, after we settled a truce to our advantage. Always important to look at truces when you have an enemy empire under pressure in a war. See if you can get a couple of planets and just end the war, saving you a lot of time, which you could better spend building up your economy and still getting you the gains you needed. And in terms of planets. And the crucial upgrade is this tier 3 in the economy and trade. So we can pick up impactless sites where we can use our early game dust production to pick up multiple heroes. As you can see, that worked out for us. We have a ton of governors throughout the game without having to worry about this unlock probability. I mean, you don't have to play with impactless sites, but I think it really helps you, if you have a lot of dust, to get a strong governor base, which is something we really wanted because of the singularities. So really, early game, beachhead bylaw and lava planets helped us colonize a lot of systems. And usually we went for military because we were constrained on space. And then we picked up impactless sites. And thereby, using all three of these, and eventually the luxury resource bonuses, we really set up our early game economy quite well. And were able to contest the galactic political scene afterward, or enemies afterwards, precisely because we had this strong economic base going into the middle game. Then late in the game, your goals shift a bit. You're still trying to improve your economy, but you also have to worry about the overall galactic diplomatic situations. This is past turn 50 typically. Our strategy ended up being a diplomatic one. At this point, you could think about, if you were a military faction or going for a military playthrough, you could think about crushing your neighbors and expanding your empire. What we did instead is we pursued a diplomatic policy, where here, this was our former alliance. We made allies of 2 reasonably close factions in terms of score, and added the Lumeris eventually. And we tried to, despite our allies, the allies always do random things, try to keep these factions at a relatively peaceful base so we could make sure to be at war with the most powerful faction, which is typically the Cravers. The Cravers again cheat on score. They're normally way ahead of all the other AIs for most of the game. So the real strategic objectives of the middle game are setting yourself up well in the galactic context, in addition with further developing your economy, while trying to constrain and harass or at least damage your competitors, the closest competitors. And in this case, we pursued that strategy by diplomacy, picking up a number of allies, making sure to keep relatively peaceful relationships as best we could with the other factions, and trying to target the most powerful faction, which worked out to various degrees. I mean, it's always difficult because your allies make random decisions. That's the really frustrating thing about being forced to play in an alliance like this, or deciding to play in an alliance. You often have to quickly declare truces when your allies randomly declare war on certain factions. And that is slightly annoying, but overall our strategy worked out. We became part of a galactic alliance, which really ended up being the strongest contender for victory. And the final phase of the game, the end game, is really just about closing out the game. How do you want to win? And pursuing that win condition. So if you decide you want to win by conquest, you pick up as many planets as you can. You make sure expansion disapproval is down. Wasn't really an option for us because we were not playing as a government type, which can easily sustain the expansion disapproval. Federation is the best for conquest victory because you can use heroes. You can use the bonus you get, extra expansion disapproval reduction per hero you get, to really increase your cap. And I should mention another thing we did in the middle game was choose the quest option that gave us more influence, because we were really worried about influence pressure. And that's something you do have to worry about if you're going for a diplomatic approach. You really have to keep influence pressure in mind so that other empires can't make crippling demands of you, and that you can pick up other systems diplomatically by impressing the population through influence conversion. So the last phase of the game, we're concerned with winning, basically. And this phase, you're either trying to win quickly, or you're trying to stop other factions from winning, depending on how far ahead or behind you are. Here we're reasonably far ahead. If we were really behind, we would have probably gone heavily into obliterate attack and tried to obliterate the systems of whichever faction was closest to winning, or try to invade them with powerful fleets. As it was, I think we could just go for our economic-style wonder victory, building these obelisks of all space and time with our strong industry base. It did take a while. It's not always the most exciting to watch, just building a wonder victory building or researching the best science. But I hope I gave you a better idea of how to get the highest level sciences, how to get these wonder victory buildings. And really the crucial thing was that we were already planning in the middle game for this victory condition. We were already putting these behemoths on strategics, which we needed. So really, these phases are quite fluid. Already in the middle game, you're setting yourself up well on the galactic stage, but you're already thinking about how you can win. And that part of that planning ability just comes with experience. Like, I played games where I just didn't have the required resources, and that's how I knew to go for them. And it took me a while of playing with the new expansion to figure out how good this behemoth analyzer node was. Or node analyzer. And really prioritizing that. And in this game, as I said, there's only one way of doing the strategy. Like, we chose early game economy and then a middle to early game aggressive push to build up economic base. We chose diplomacy, influence production, and strategics as our middle game strategy to set us up to win the game. And then we chose wonder victory alongside science as a backup plan to close out the game in the end game. And we didn't see the need of, apart from alliance pressure and invasions of Crevice space, to go into heavily disrupting them, or go into some heavy disruptive tech, for instance. Obliterated tech, which is so good. We didn't have to worry as much about enemy obliterators, because we were doing so well in terms of being in a better position to win the game. Again, score is quite misleading. No other faction is really that close to winning the game, possibly excluding expansion victory via conquest. And we could just sit back, build up these obelisks with all space and time, and close out the game. I mean, a couple of systems were destroyed nearby, and we did have to build some system shields, but fortunately, and perhaps through just carefully checking the borders, and perhaps through a bit of luck, we managed to avoid obliterator disruption. Again, obliterators are I've been talking about them a lot, they're really powerful, and they kind of shape at least some part of the end game, just because you have to just watch out for that ability to just take out one of your systems without even declaring war. I think they could really rework that system. So, again, it's important to remember these three broad stages of strategy, which sort of feed into each other. And remember also that there's different ways of doing this, and when we do a different playthrough, we'll think about how our strategy fed into these or how strategy was affected by these three phases and three goals in different ways. For instance, if we play a military faction early in the game, we want to build up our economy by attacking our neighbors, minor civilizations, and claiming their planets. And if we're playing as a federation, we want to expand as much as possible and make use of that nice federation bonus. And also, if we're playing a different victory condition, other than wonder or science, we can go for that and set ourselves up differently to win the game. We also might play with the victory conditions at some point on this channel. Like, I thought about putting some victory conditions off to force a conquest victory, for instance, to play a really long game and force myself to use all of these technology options. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the series. I hope you learned something, and I hope this way of thinking of the grand strategy of the game, or the flow of the game, can help you improve your game and think about what you're trying to do in each phase of the game. So remember, the crucial difference is the early mid game, where you're concerned with building up your economy either by conquest or by expansion or by building up your main system or whatever your strategy is. Then it's how do you, the mid game, where you, in addition to the economy, you're concerned with how you're setting yourselves up against other factions. How are you doing the global galactic stage? What policy you're pursuing against your neighbors? Are you going to be aggressive, try and crush them, take their economy for your own? Are you going to make diplomatic bonds with them? Are you going to gang up on certain factions? How are you going to slow down the strongest faction? And the last phase of the game, where you're concerned with how are you going to win and how are you going to stop other factions from winning. Like, we're getting obelisk all space and time, we're going for the wonder, and in this phase, we're really worried about other factions that might win. We might have pursued a more obliterator-heavy, disruptive strategy if we thought we weren't clearly leading the game. So, let me know what you think about this kind of finishing up video, explaining the strategy in a compact way, and let me know what you thought about the series overall, and what I can improve, which faction I should play next, and I really do hope you enjoyed and learned something. Thanks again for watching. Consider subscribing, consider pressing the bell, because the YouTube algorithm isn't great and you might not find out about the next video otherwise. And I hope you had a nice time here on the channel.